The first year of King. I'm curious, man. Oh, yeah. So, what is oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm leaving. So, maybe we should consider the same. Right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, we're different. Okay, great. So this will be that you. Okay. Integration of the problems. Because I was just I it's the for the very short. So I wasn't sent it was forwarded to the key. Okay. Okay. So I'm not making yeah. It's the wrong process. Different people. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. Right. Or like surely there's some yeah. I've been into them, I'm afraid to share them. Yeah. Over the section. Geo way existing. I can send the PDF file.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We could do better. Good morning. Great. Final day, final stretch. We have two plenaries this morning from High Harp and Imagiomics. And we also have a panel session which is moderated by Cliff. So that would be right after the break with all the leads from each of the five institutes. So we'll have five leads here, and Cliff will be moderating that panel. That should be really wonderful. So those are the two things on the agenda. Of course, we have food. So we'll have box lunches and we'll adjourn after that. So before we get started, maybe we'll have a quick recap of yesterday, and Xianjie wanted to tell us something about the HDR ML challenge.
Yeah, right. Hi, good morning, everyone. Yesterday, I want to find an opportunity to share with everyone about the HDR machine learning challenge. And we have successfully ran for 2 years, and many of the institutes have been actively involved. In year one, we are working on the anomaly detection. There are globally more than 500 people participate, and more than 2,600 submissions. So in year two, the topic is about scientific modeling the out of distributions. The number of participants decreased to around 400. However, there are more engagement on this guided machine learning challenge. We have more than 4,800 submissions, and students are really engaged on this study. And we are planning for year three. It's still under discussions, but the current idea preliminary is to train the foundation model to encode high field simulation into agent-friendly encoding to allow participants fine-tune these models for pattern sorting out. And this is a proposal from the Henry Phillips group in HCD3, but I think it's still open for discussions. But we are hoping that we can converge this soon. Then we can prepare in the year three. If we can roll it out in early next year, then we can aim for concluding in one of the major computer science conference or the scientific conference that align to the subject of the HDR. So here's my brief sharing from what I missed yesterday. And we will continue work with everyone to clean this up. And so our goal is that we can do a better promotion and try to boost both the participants and engage the enthusiastic challenges for the whole event. Okay, so I would like to briefly recap the interesting points from the morning session yesterday. We have two institute presentations, and I present on behalf of ACD3. We talk about how we speed up scientific breakthrough by putting customized build, ultra low latency, and high throughput AI to hardware. Then we can apply that to analyze and control the data productions and process, and apply to high physics, astrophysics, and also the neuroscience. And then additive follow-up is about the ID4 creates tailored AI and digital tools. In particular, generative models, which can understand physical symmetries. This can be applied to help scientists quickly discover and design new materials. Follow that, we have a breakout session. The subject is about the reliability and trustworthy AI. And we have 4 breakout sessions. And Professor Yue Lin led the first team and talking about the foundation model can figure out sensitive location and from the sensitive locations from the basic picture and text. So we need privacy safeguards, which can build some common community consent and regulations to protect this data without stripping off the useful and map features. And Professor Jun Wu led the second team and talking about measuring how confident an AI model actually is. And we can tell if it's give trustworthy answers or just getting tripped off by unusual offbeat data on critical areas like wildfire tracking and human trafficking prevention. And Peter and Ramin, they did the third team, talking about truthfully responsible AI means you can keep the entire system accountable from safety checks and for fair data habits to share goals. So we can actively prevent harm instead of pointing finger to something go wrong when things happen. So the fourth team and talking about the reproducible AI, this is led by Dr. Samita Dharmola. And to keep AI-assisted science reliable, we need to track every piece of the puzzle, from code to hardware to prompt and the decisions. And we want to keep it all in a central hub, then while keeping humans in charge of double check for the final result. So these are the morning session. I will pass time to Vandana talking about the afternoon session.
She did a very good job of the detailed summary. I'll give you a very quick summary so that you remember the takeaways rather than a lot of the details. So there were 2 breakout sessions in the afternoon. One was around Earth dynamics and the other was around the data and infrastructure. And I think we came up with the conclusion, and this is my takeaway really from those 2 breakouts, is there's a lot of cross-cutting themes in the HDR ecosystem. In the first breakout on Earth dynamics, there were discussion on the sea ice, land ice interaction, causality, and wildfires. And the applications seem very different, but they all had cross-cutting themes. For example, you need to go beyond correlation to causality. But in order for you to do causality, you have to understand the domain well, you have to identify all the features, and that's where you need the domain experts and so on. So that was the first session on Earth dynamics, and common themes emerged from that. The second one, as I had mentioned, it's the bane of all of our existence, which is data and having good AI-ready data. And again, it was very interesting to see that even after all of these 4 years, we still deal with a lot of the bad data quality issues. So in one of the sessions, what stuck with me is good AI, or rather new flashy AI models are like lipstick on a pig if your data quality is bad. So I think all of us agreed that we need to have good data quality, and sometimes data quality could even mean like going all the way to China to validate data. And it was very interesting examples that came up in those sessions. So I hope with that, we'll pass it on to today's session, and I hope you enjoy the day. Thanks.
Thank you, Sijay and Manjana, both for that nice summary. So go from here. So we'll start off the plenary sessions. Let's see. Yours is directly there. So we'll start off with Tanya then first. Let's see. Hide the floating controls. Find it, yeah.
Need to share it.
Oh, the screen is shared.
That's okay, because it shows the speaker version for the Zoom. They can see my speaker version. Yep. Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Ready? We're now down to about a quarter, so you have to work. Let's do a little math. How much? 4 times as hard, right? Like, you have to pay attention 4 times as hard. So let's do this. Should have brought my clicker. Okay. Imagomics Institute. So thank you, Anand, for pronouncing imagomics correctly. So omics, all of biology from images. Imagomics. Let's do this. If you haven't gotten the training yet, this is your chance. Imagomics. Imagomics. Good. Now you can tell everybody how to pronounce it and be actually. So it is a new discipline, scientific field focused on understanding biology, omics, all of biology, of organisms from images, particularly focusing on traits and observable phenotype. Like everybody else, we were funded by the HDR in this room. HDR, Harnessing Data Revolution program, 15 million initially, plus one supplement. We started like 4 of the 5, October 2021. And the goal is to develop AI methods and tools, the how of it, sort of how do we build imageomics, based on publicly available, publicly funded digital image collections from national centers, field stations, museums, online platforms, and individual observers. And we really think of it broadly for creating tools, methods, platforms, frameworks that are available across all areas of biology to understand the rules governing life on Earth. A little ambitious, but yeah. Why do we think we can do it? Because images by far are the most abundant and readily available source of information about everything today. From what you had for lunch or dinner yesterday to what's in your backyard or on a beautiful nature walk. How many of you have taken a picture of a living organism in the last week? Great question. You stole my joke, but yes, If you have not raised your hand, I would like to remind you that humans are indeed living organisms. So yeah, most of it, there's a massive amount of images out there about everything. And today, most of the images are also, especially in the biological context, are paired up with other contextual data such as text description, geospatial attributes, and molecular information. And biology is the field, the domain of structures. It's the field of structures, the science of structures. It gave us the first hierarchical organization of information in the form of taxonomy. And now there are whole conferences and obsessive communities of bioontologies, from gene ontology to cell structures and structural ontology, functional ontology, trait ontology, anatomical ontology. Everything is organized. So you want to build a knowledge graph, this is a great point to start, right? And so these structures naturally can shape the architecture of the machine learning models, and so that the outcomes are not just this is the species of fish, but this is the species of fish because of all of these traits. And of course, the paradigms that we're creating here from the computational perspective generalized way beyond biology. But biology, as Jianyang Gu, one of the Imagenomics postdocs, will tell you, and it's his strong position, is a great field to push the development of computer science, because it has naturally these structures that we invent or create toy versions of in pretty much every other field, from fine-grained classification to hierarchical to hierarchical structures, to the evidence in the form of observable image parts. All of this is well grounded in biology. So let's give it a chance. All right. So what if we pair up images of organisms, the basic image information, with the basic biological information of taxonomy? Does it give us anything? The basic hierarchical structure, right? Well, it turns out it does. So we trained the first foundation model in 2024, BioClip, the first foundation model for the Tree of Life. That one was tiny one, just 10 million images of about 500,000 species. Before we go any further, by the way, any guesses, how many species of plants, animals, and fungi, mushrooms, fungi, are out there in the world? Like order of magnitude, yellow number. Some millions, like single, double, triple millions, hundreds of millions. Up, down, going once. Hundreds of millions. Everybody has the same kind of sense. More? Like think of all the plants and fungi and animals out there. Trillion? All right, so here's the shocking number. And the estimate until about 3 years ago was somewhere on the order of 10, 15 million. It's based on the rate of discovery. So we've upped it a little bit, but to about 30, 50 million. That's it. Right? That's it. It's a shockingly small number. But what's even more shocking, that of all of those, either 10, 15 or 30, 50, only 2 million are named and described to the level of species. 2! We're losing species faster than we can name them today. And so the second version of BioClip foundation model trained on 214 million images, and actually the new 2.5 version is 240 million images, from Encyclopedia of Life, Global Biodiversity Information Facility, iNaturalist, FathomNet, and Bioscan. These are like also amazing projects, every one of them, right? The Global Biodiversity Information Facility collects observations of nature from all over the world. The iNaturalist is a citizen science phone-based nature observation contributions. FathomNet is making marine data and ocean data, visual data, AI ready, machine learning ready. Bioscan is part of the Barcode of Life project, BOLD, which creates the genomic barcodes, right? The meta barcodes of gene sequences for species so that you can use eDNA and you can, like, by getting a sequence, you can know which species it is for all of the species out there that we can right now. So these are like coming from all over the world, from all over, from different domains. And so we have boosted also things like invertebrate collections, which is representation, which was super underrepresented, all the insects and arthropods. So now we have about 1 million species, which shockingly, as you just discovered, is about half of everything that's named out there. So with that, so we build this foundation model, and not only it implicitly learns that hierarchy, because every image we use clip architecture, so every image of an organism is captioned with the full taxonomic sequence of that organism. So, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Most of them. There are some end levels that differ. So because it's hierarchical, that sentence of the caption, it learns implicitly that hierarchy. But wait, there's more. So, of course, because it learns hierarchy, and so the embedding is this naturally clustered, you can actually do now species classification with this foundation model, and you can do zero shot, and you can do it at any taxonomic hierarchy level, because it learned all of it. But what's more, scale matters. So the second version of this 214 million images within each species, and by the way, if you want to learn anything more, Jianyang is the lead on the second and third now model version of the 2.5 version of and also he is an expert on model and data distillation and foundation models, and is on the job market, academic job market this year. So with that, in addition to clustering by species, because you would expect, right, the data to cluster by species, there is a dimension where you actually have subspecies, subclustering by juvenile adult, without us labeling anything, female, male. So because the appearance is different, disease, non-disease, and not just disease, non-disease, but by different types of diseases. So the scale with this very simple, actually, architecture, right, exposes the information that's already exists in the image. Across images, we asked, okay, the very first evolutionary question that gave birth to this connection of form to function is there a dimension by which Darwin's finches align in some functional dimension? And in birds, the most important functional trait, the most important piece of anatomy that connects to some function, and actually in most species, is the mouth. It's the beak. The shape of the beak determines and fits and shaped by the evolution and selection to what it eats, the diet. The diet shapes the beak shapes the diet. So there is a dimension by which all Darwin's finches, for example, align by beak size, without us labeling anything that's related to beak size. All the fish species are separated by freshwater, non-freshwater species. So you can start asking actual scientific questions. We have an evolutionary biologist who is looking at the distance between female and male across different bird species to understand the sex dimorphism and the relationship to mating systems. We have fish biologists who are looking at this. Why are there these inclusion of non-freshwater fish on the freshwater fish side? Is there an evolutionary reason? We have very practical forest managers who are looking at the subclustering of disease, non-disease to identify, to have early disease detection. right? And including now, not just in plants, this was, the test data set was in plants, but also for birds. The World Organization for Animal Health uses BioClip 2 as their base starting point. You can explore this space. And so we've created tons, by way I mean the team, I have nothing to do with it. The team of graduate students, postdocs, and fantastic data science engineer, and Elizabeth Campolongo is here, and our research engineer, Matt Thompson, and Ned Zhang, who is not here, created a series of kind of apps on top of it. And one of them is, for example, this searchlight, because to explore this massive space of 214 million embeddings is very hard. So what's around it? If I have an image, it's part of the species is identified as milkweed in this case. What's around it? So this is a diseased version of milkweed. So it shows all the diseased images of milkweed around it. And there are different kinds of disease. So you can start exploring what are the diseases that are affecting this particular species. You can show this a moth pollinating a plant, and it will show you all the other images of the same species of moth that pollinating other species of plants. So you can start asking these kinds of questions. You can ask also, you can add, instead of adding the direct taxonomy, you can add the evolutionary information. So for computer scientists on our team, it was shocking to discover that taxonomy is not the same as phylogeny. It's not the same as evolution. It organizes information differently. So if you add the evolutionary hierarchy to images directly, you can look, for example, at a whole family of fish, minnows in this case. And by restricting it to different levels of phylogeny, by restricting back in time, you can say, okay, what are the features, what are the parts of the image that are common to and are necessary for separating at that level of evolution back in time, or at that level of phylogeny, so ancestral species. And you can start moving forward in time and create a sort of imageome, right? So genome holds the evolutionary information and the relatedness of species to its ancestral species back in time through the phylogeny. You can do this with the images. And you can start asking sort of what happens using generative AI in this case. So that's the encoder. The decoder said, okay, well, what might have been the ancestral species where this particular trait evolved, right? Or what is the common between those two back in time? What is the ancestral species? Or what happens if we swap those two traits in time? So you can play kind of this knockout and swap mutation at the image level. You can zoom in a lot more and ask for different vision transformers, why? And so this is where biology shines, because you don't need to create toy data sets to evaluate whether any kind of interpretable AI actually is useful or makes sense. We have a lot of biological knowledge accumulated. When we say this is the species of bird, there is the species description paper, there is the field guide, and there are dichotomous keys. 3 very different ways of telling you this is the species of bird because of these visually observable traits. Right? And so we have that ground truth and then some. And so the beauty of it is not only this is the field where we can learn how to do this kind of interpretable AI and then apply it to other fields, but we can also not just verify and get sanity check. Yeah, it recapitulates all these. This is the species of bird because Like here's an example. This is a rose-breasted grosbeak because it has rose breast, and white chest, white belly, and black head, and all of this. And you can do it from every kind of different viewpoints. But you can also start discovering new traits, and you can verify them, right? So you can do it also again at every level of taxonomy. And so this is a whole set of interpretability methods. This is not saliency maps. This is not just GradCam. This is a biology grounded, but you can do a domain grounded interpretability, fine-grained classification, and interpretability methods that add attention heads on top of visual transformers. And so that's one way to achieve interpretability. The other one is to, also on top of these visual transformers, and actually it started with large language models, the sparse autoencoders, of kind of on top of the embeddings to add the next layer of even sparser, bigger, higher dimensional space. So this is not dimensionality reduction, there is dimensionality in augmentation to allow for the sparsity of data kind of representation. And so within that space, it's like the principal components on steroids. If you haven't heard it, it can actually allow you to recover some semantics of the information. And so we translated, actually one among the first ones, that kind of approach to images. And so now you can start connecting this parts of highlighted image parts to visual, to some kind of useful biological semantics or scientific semantics. It works beyond biology, but biology makes sense. It's a great playground and it's a wonderful grounding context. So you can start asking what does the model think is important for each class? What's different between those two? What is unique to this class versus everybody else? What is similar between those two classes, species, or what's unique to this one that this one doesn't have? And like regardless of everybody else. So here's what it looks like. So it highlighted the beak in this case, one of the features that are firing super hard on this species and not others. But what about the beak, right? From scientific point of view, okay, so the beak, like a bird has a beak, whoop-de-doo, right? What about it? And so John Young worked, and a graduate student, and two graduate students actually from genomics, Sam Stevens, who is now Dr. Sam Stevens, and Jake Beatty, on this idea that you can remove the contribution of that particular dimension, that particular sparse autoencoder dimension, and recreate, so that's John Young's idea, recreate the same object, but removing the contribution of that particular dimension. Okay, great. That's what it looks like. Notice that the beak now is small and like dark tipped. Okay, what about if we jack it up all the way, the same dimension, leaving everything else the same? So notice that the beak now becomes different shape, bigger, and white, no color. So you can start now understanding what semantically this dimension actually of sparse autoencoder actually tells you. What about the beak, right? Well, it's the shape and the color and the size. There's also a whole bunch of other tools that we've developed, from things like single click, essentially segmentation, fine-grained segmentation. So you can take a whole stack of images from, let's say, Natural History Museum collections or others, and with one click, create a mask, either for the whole organism or just parts of the organism, like this part of the butterfly, the ray of the butterfly, or these kind of rays, and just it will segment it through the whole thing. They don't have to be identical. So it becomes very, very useful in really speeding up and scaling up, not just processing data, but identifying those traits, right? Segmenting traits instead of sitting a human processing hundreds of thousands or millions of images. So we tested it out with the National Ecological Observatory beetles collection. So Eric Sokol over there is from the NEON, National Ecological Observatory. So they have a biorepository where, so National Ecological Observatory is the ecological data collection facility, 41 sites across the country in different ecosystems, aquatic, terrestrial, and they collect standardized data for long periods of time across all of them. And some of the data is sensor data immediately translated into digital packages. You can download, it's free, or actual biorepositories. They actually collect beetles. So these beetles sit unprocessed, most of them, in a biorepository. And so this is part of our AI, experiential introduction to AI and ecology course, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. One of the projects in the course last time was, okay, well, let's start processing those beetles. You take it, there's a tube that contains those beetles from a ground trap. They go from ground trap into alcohol. So these are not live beetles. They're not going to crawl away from this. You dump it on this piece of papers, bounding box around them, remove background, segment. And so you can do this one-click segmentation down to different body parts. And then you can actually start measuring. You can put landmarks and start measuring. And turns out one of the things that, and we've tested, that the measurement that's automatically done is more accurate than humans with calipers, which is not terribly surprising. But a lot of biologists, what? No. A lot of biologists were at the beginning skeptical, right? But now we can actually start producing these measurements at scale. We can also start connecting them, form to function. These are ground beetles. We started with ground beetles, carabid. And they are responsible for different parts of ecosystem function in the ground, just like all the other organisms are responsible for a lot of other functions. And not only their shape it tells you something about their function, but also their function determines their shape. So there's a cycle there. And to understand this connection, form to function and function to form, Imageomics runs a yearly event called Datapalooza, where it's kind of hackathon style event. We invite people from all over the world, scientists from all over the world, biologists, computer scientists. Bring your data, bring your methods. We focus on Imageomics methods. And so for the course of 3 days, people really trying to get answers to their data, to their scientific questions. So the first one was Datapalooza. The second one was Beetlepalooza. We focused on beetles, and actually that's where the idea for beetles came from. A lot of things were built from there, including pipelines for some of the both agricultural beetle imaging and understanding. InsectNet, a project at Penn State that also builds specialized insect camera traps and focuses on pollinators. Also used ideas from that came out of Beetlepalooza to build their workflow processing. And then Mothbox is a moth camera trap, also started out the pipelines for workflows started out there. Last year was Funkapalooza. This year, which focused on functional traits, so form to function. And this year we're about to have Florapalooza, all the plants. But from Funkapalooza and these beetles, that was part of also the last scientific modeling out of distribution, ML challenge of the 3 HDR Institute. Ours was focused on predicting climate prediction using ecological data. So using beetle species communities to predict drought, and that was based on NEON data again. So I mentioned this in the last couple of minutes. I mentioned this experiential introduction to AI in ecology. So great, we can ask all of these wonderful questions, but we've repeatedly here over the last 5 years and also over the last 3 days, every one of us was talking about training the next generation. How do we create and sustain this community of interdisciplinary scientists? It takes time to learn the language. It takes time to start understanding each other so that we can go beyond like, hey, can you write code that does X? Nope. What's your question? Or the other version, can I have your data? Nope. What's your question? Right? So that we can understand each other's questions and start translating into our disciplines and bring our best expertise in disciplinary expertise to answer transdisciplinary questions. So we started this actually in 2010, long before, with a course we then called Field Computational Ecology, and then where we brought in computer science and ecologists, threw them in the field and said, do something amazing. And it has to be interdisciplinary. We realized we need to give them training. So we did get at the beginning boot camp, but then, and the field was Kenya. So amazingly motivating. And actually the first course, so I taught it when I was still at UIC. So the course in 2010, 2012, and 2015, all of those were when I was faculty at UIC. And the computer science students, we partnered up with the Princeton Tropical Ecology course that was taking ecology students to Kenya. And so the computer science students were UIC students, ecology students were Princeton students. And then we started growing it. And then we started giving them background before they go to the field. We used Skype long before the pandemic, 2012. It was weird. Everybody was like, you're doing what? But it worked. And so we gave them background and we started growing the curriculum. And by 2023, so this was already funded by Imagiomics, this course was then still just in Kenya, where we had students from many universities, like really with background over the fall semester, online, and then coming to Kenya for 3 weeks to do interdisciplinary field projects, super fast data collection analysis, learning respect for field data and the quirkiness of field data. We say that data is always right, nature always wins. And then sort of following up through the semester on these projects. From the first 5, so last iteration was 24-25, we had 2 field sites for the first time, Kenya and the NEON station, the NEON site at Hawaii, in Hilo, Hawaii, because we needed a US site. And so with that, like it not only just the course grew, but also with these 5 iterations of the course, we've had over 100 publications led by students. Careers have started. These are some of the examples of the course project. So you see the beetles, you see there is the variation of bird vocalizations across these tiny woodlots in the middle of the lava fields. We looked at the phenology, the change in the flowering, new leaves, old leaves, fruiting of plants. There's a lot that happened. There's also one of the first projects in the 2022-23 course was understanding movement and behavior of social animals or animals in general in the wild using drones, right? And so that project started a PhD by Jenna Klein and the whole line of research, because behavioral traits are also traits. Behavior and social behavior are also traits. And so that work recently culminated in sort of, after many publications, in publication in Methods in Ecology and Evolution, and won the Robert May Prize for Early Career in Ecology and Evolution. Sir Robert May is a legendary ecologist, late Sir Robert May. And Jenna Klein is, to the best of our knowledge, we looked through all of them and I talked to the Royal Society members who award the prize in UK, and they say, yeah, the first non-biologist ecologist to win this prize. So this is a huge milestone. And so drones are now a big prize. We heard several times today, drones for disaster, drones for sort of surveys in general, spatial data. So Jenna is leading the FAIR for AI drone data standard. If you want to join the effort or you're interested in this, you can join it. And she's presenting it actually at the TADWIG, which is the biodiversity and ecology standards groups, the international in Oslo, in Norway, in September. So the future, as was actually already said several times, is multimodal, multi-scale, and multi-sensory. And so to do that, to start building all of this, like essentially the benchmark for all of this, we instrumented a safari in Ohio. The largest safari in North America is an hour from Ohio State, the wilds, to throw a bunch of multimodal sensors, everything we could possibly see, so that we can do everything, see and collect information and understand everything everywhere all at once, and learn how to design edge systems that work in this highly constrained environments while minimizing the impact on the very ecosystems that we want to understand, including animal behavior. Because if your drone is changing the behavior of the zebra you are interested in, you're not collecting the right behavior. So they have to be adaptive. And so we need to move. We have the first data sets that are coming out, the first multimodal system, multi-scale systems that are starting to be published, because we need to move from speeding up and scaling up data collection with delay to truly understanding systems, to generating hypotheses, to provide operational decision when and where it's needed. So that's kind of, the students had a lot of fun. And we're moving now to changing also the whole how we do machine learning by creating benchmarks that make sense in the field. Benchmark, because machine learning people, we think in terms of benchmark. Give me a benchmark, give me a task, give me training data and testing data, and I will design methods and I will win competitions with it, right? So benchmark is a task plus training data and testing data split. But the task doesn't have to be a machine learning task. And so we're creating a whole set of biology grounded tasks on biodiversity, on the scientific tasks around traits and movement, on multimodal reasoning. And the questions are now starting to really grow. Like, what does the benchmark for ecosystem health look like? What does the benchmark for disaster prediction look like? What does the benchmark for post-flood neighborhood look like, right? So we have a whole ecosystem of our tools, the whole catalog. I will skip the human versus AI, but I would love to talk to you about it, because we also have a whole funded by FAIR's grant, recent FAIR's grant. We have a whole thing of, can AI actually replace humans? The answer is no, thankfully, not yet. They actually are pretty horrible, even when you tell them and benchmark on scientific tasks that are data-driven and tell them, get data from this source. But it also justifies that our data has to be AI ready. So we've done a lot. We had tons of workshops. We've, of course, had tons of publications, award-winning ones. We had the best CVPR, so BioClip won the top computer vision conference best student paper in 2024. It was the Spotlight. The next version was Spotlight paper in Europe. So we have the Robert May Prize. We have over 110 publications, and by even super conservative count, over 200 presentations at conferences and workshops and other venues, including in UN and sort of super high visibility. We have now 23 graduates from Imageomics, funded by Imageomics. We're growing. Our community has over 300 members. At least this is the active Slack, Imageomics Slack community, with a lot of activities like Datapalooza, Florapalooza, experiential introduction to AI course, interdisciplinary training, and next-gen fellows and grads. Our models make an impact. Not only BioClip has over 1 million downloads, but it is used by World Organization for Animal Health, the ESP, the Earth Species Project, the Neon is starting to use it, InsectNet, Mothbots. So a pollinator survey, a pollinator monitoring, and many, many, many more. We're building new taxonomies and dichotomous keys for biologists to start understanding species that are hard to understand. We're actually creating synthetic CRISPR. We have tons of code repos, data sets, packages, FAIR guides. It's the golden standard of FAIR for AI data. And it's been cited as such by many organizations and now been adapted by many other AI institutes, actually nothing to do with biology. Of course, we have Imagenomics workshops at top conferences, biology and computer science. And we're training and we're growing in terms of the community, also funded by different grants, but also we're open to collaboration with you because we know that our problems, our frameworks, our thinking spans the rest of science. Thank you.
Quick question. Anyone has?
Oh. It's okay, we can also talk later. That's fine. No burning questions? All right. Everybody's like, I just want to get out of here. I don't blame you. I was going to cut my talk, but I got excited.
Okay. Thank you, Tanya. Next, we'll have Vandana talk to us about IHA.
See. Oh. Oh, it's not. Oh, this is mine actually. No, I think that was Tanya's. I think this is mine. It's shared already, right? So I can. Download it or oh, there it is. Okay. All right. All right. So I got fired up with all of the energy that Tanya brought. So I'm going to try and channel some of that energy as well. I think all of the five, all of our institutes have really demonstrated the communities we have created. And it's evident from the talks that you've heard, evident from the groups that are here. And I want to demonstrate some of that with iHarp as well. And the way I thought of this talk is in somewhat of a reflection mode as well, that obviously we've done great things, but there have been challenges. So I want to recognize that and highlight some of the challenges as well, which is a really important learning curve as well as we go forward, especially when we bring in multiple disciplines and multiple types of communities together. I'm very confident that when you hear in the panel next, you will hear about some of the challenges as well. So that's why my talk is labeled as such. It's really, we're all trying to do AI for science. And now we are moving towards the tools that we have created. You heard in Tanya's talk as well and others. We're really trying to put tools out in the community. So if you want to create a really impactful toolbox for the community for science, how can we learn lessons from here and move forward? So yesterday in Chetan's talk, he said a very interesting thing. Impact is not just that you put this out there. Impact is who used it and what did they do with it? What was the downstream effect of it? So I'll try to highlight some of those impacts as well along the way. So I'm from University of Maryland, Baltimore County. A bunch of our students are here, our experts are here, and my co-PI, Jianwu Wang, is here as well. So you'll see a lot of the work from our students and colleagues represented here. And we actually started with 7 or 8 institutions in the core iHarp, and then we expanded a lot. And these are just the core ones who are directly funded, but then the effect has gone on to many, many more institutions who are using the tools that we are creating. So before I dive into iHarp, I also wanted to share a little bit about the multi-domain work that I do beyond iHarp. And pretty much for all of the 20-some years that I've been focusing on data science, AI, my work has been about multi-domain AI or multi-domain data science, because for me, the fun really happens when you bring two disparate data sets together, and in the heterogeneous spaces is where all of the interesting stuff is happening. And these recent projects are related and somewhat intersecting to the work. So each of these projects brings different disciplines together. So I'm from information science and trained in computing, computer science. I often work with geosciences. And some of the work that we do in iHarp is actually supported by the cyber infrastructure proposal or cyber infrastructure professionals, such as Roy, who spoke to you yesterday. And they really make this stuff happen. They really make all of this flow well. So we were fortunate enough to get one of the Skype awards, and that actually made strong connections for us with another organization, University of Maryland Center for Environmental Sciences, and that led to more projects. And now we are studying oceans and how chlorophyll spreads from the surface to the deep surface. And again, collaboration with geosciences. Another interesting project that we have is on bringing linguistics into deepfake detection, audio deepfake detection, and even for multi-speaker deepfake detection. So do you trust everything that you hear? That depends on your own discernment, right? How I speak here, you can kind of catch how I speak, right? But if a robotic sounding Vandana comes up, you may not trust it, right? So we work with linguistics folks to understand what's the real audio, and we are expanding into multi-speaker as well and partial multi-speakers as well. So that was just to give you a sense of the multi-domain and the interest that I have, and that's why my lab is called Multi-Data Lab, because I think everything is multidisciplinary. Everything is multi-data. You cannot do fun stuff with single data. Sorry. I stand by that. So diving into iHarp, you've heard about iHarp some, but I'll share a little bit more. And this is a picture from our previous all hands at Six Spatial in Minnesota, and we are having our next at CU Boulder. So let me know if you want to attend, and love to connect you. This is just the core of iHarp, and the branches of iHarp have spread out a lot. It's very hard for me to capture every single, person who has worked on iHarp, because some of our collaborators have put out tools which are being used by thousands or hundreds of people in their discipline. So, but the core of iHarp is several collaborators and across 12 collaborating universities that are directly funded. Several of our students have graduated, and I'll share a little bit more on that as well. So what does iHarp really do? It's really looking at the impact of the Antarctic and the Arctic ice sheets and the melt happening on the ice sheets on the sea level rise. It's as simple as that. Now, the reality is that if you look at the ice sheets on the Arctic and Antarctic, majority of the fresh water is there. So if, for example, if the entire Antarctic ice sheet melts, you will have about 100 feet sea level rise. That's a terrifying scenario. The beach will be in Ohio or Kentucky or somewhere. So I think when you look at the polar system, it's made up of several interconnected systems. So here on the image that you see, just on the ice sheet, just on the surface of the ice sheet, lakes start forming if there's a melt. And sometimes those lakes will result in cracks. And the crack will actually result in the entire iceberg going into the ocean. And if that iceberg goes into the ocean, that iceberg can actually break into smaller parts. And those are called chiclets. And some of the size of the chiclet could be the size of Manhattan. So every piece on the ice sheet has its own dynamics, has its own processes happening. Hydrology processes are happening. Under the ice, interesting things are happening. So over the past several years, lots of models and data have been collected through many satellite surveys that have been done, field studies that have been done, analyses that have been done, reanalyses that have been done. So iHarp's goal is to harness the data and the models that are already there, and how can we do physics-driven machine learning through these data sets. Now, the reality is that we always have to collaborate with polar scientists. And within that, there are so many subsections of polar science, right? The sea ice people don't talk to the land ice people. It's a funny story. I'll come to that in a minute. And the air people don't talk to the land people. So it's a really interesting dynamic, similar to other places. And that's why I think the multi-domain aspect is important here. So there are several components and subcomponents that interact to each other, which leads to several of the iHeart projects. The way we themed it is there's a whole section that deals with data. There's a whole section that deals with models and prediction, and then there's a whole section that deals with scalability, and there are several projects along these lines. I'm not going to go through all, but I'll give you a flavor of the types of things that we do in iHeart. So as I mentioned, and I'm going to give you the types of projects and the scale of the projects that we have. So again, our focus is Arctic and Antarctic ice sheets. But the interesting thing is there's also sea ice, and the sea ice has an impact on ice sheets as well. So we cannot study that in isolation. So our scale is continent, subcontinent scale analysis, or Earth level analysis in some cases. As I mentioned, on the surface of the ice sheet, lakes are forming. Again, these are unannotated satellite image data. Nobody has, made a nice circle for you to see this is a lake. Nobody has made a nice outline. Nobody had made, I shouldn't say has, had made. Now we have some of that. Again, glaciers are breaking off, and these little pieces that you see in the image, the tiny pieces, they might be size of a city or bigger. So it's important to track where they are headed. Under the ice, there's a lot of dynamics happening. So every time snow falls, it makes a layer. The next day the snow falls, it makes another layer. The next day the snow falls, makes another layer. So there's layers of ice, kind of like tree rings. If you cut a tree, you will see all these rings that represent the age of the tree. The same way, these layers represent the age of the ice. So it's important for us to understand what's the lowest layer, how far does it go, can we track it back to the ice age? So several planes have flown over Arctic and Antarctic, and they actually capture this through radio stratigraphy images. So we try to annotate these, not annotated before. So these are things, eventually we want to come up to like a whole scale like that for multiple images. And I'm going to talk about some of these more projects as well. We've also collaborated with NASA on digital twin Earth models, and these are, entire Earth models, and just a single piece, a single, cube that you see in there is for us here. And Chaya, I don't know if she's here today, but very nice publications out of that. So looking at all of this, there's really nice, interesting problems here. And, you want to get to models for all of these. But I think this will be a story from all institutes, that we have all of this data, but is it really good data, right? I said yesterday, that's probably the hardest problem for all of us. So I think there's this data story that we see pretty much in all projects. So you start by saying, okay, I need some data. And then you say, well, I don't know if the data is available. Maybe, and especially in geosciences, this happens, that data is in the drawers of some scientist who may not want to share the data, because data is the dissertation of like 5 of the PhD students, because they went to collect the data, right? So it's dark data, it's somebody's drawer. Well, then let's say you find the data, and then you say, well, is it adequate? Is it enough? And then you say, I got data from all of these sources. It's really big now. What do I do with it? And then we say, well, but is it adequate? Is it the right data? And then you say, okay, I got the right data. Now, is it labeled? So I think we go in these circles, and that's where the real challenge comes in. So you do want to do these models, but I think if you don't have this story straightened out, you cannot get to the good models. So that's where this story in my talk is for, you want to do AI for science. You want to get to the toolbox, there will be some highs, there will be some lows, and there'll be some horizons. So that's where the story starts for me. So let's talk about some of the highs and some of the projects that I mentioned. And I'll give you very, very brief snippets. I have QR codes that leads to our toolkit page, which has some of the GitHub cards and publications linked. You can go to the iHeart page. It has several publications and presentations linked there as well. So looking at the highs. The first high that I want to mention is we did this annotation activity for the surface lakes that I mentioned. So these images exist. Nobody has outlined these lakes. And this is an open problem, because these lakes can expand very quickly, the cracks can form, and the entire iceberg can go into the ocean. And that directly leads to sea level rise. So it's very important to understand that. Annotation was not there. Barely a handful of algorithms have looked at it. So what we brought in is, this was 3 years ago, we brought in a K through 12 partnership. And what we did is we had over 1,000 students help us with the annotation task. And it became a very interesting activity for them. They enjoyed it a lot. Their perceptions were changed toward climate change. And it was just amazing to see these 9 schools and involved along the 1,000 students. And when we had the final presentation with the students, they talked about going into geosciences. They talked about, I switch off my dorm light more now. I mean, even these small effects were useful. We got that annotated data. It was very closely worked on with our scientists so that it's well annotated and well structured, a lot of cleaning and pre-processing. I won't belabor the point. And then we ran this competition in Six Spatial Cup 2023. And then what we got is the real science out of it. Our algorithms, the number of algorithms that were available for annotation almost tripled. About 15 submissions came in, more submissions actually, but 15 that were scored, and 5 of them got the top award, and those are available. Now, you will say that, okay, it's done, workshop is done, we have those papers out, GitHub is out, it's done, right? It's great. Now, what we wanted to actually take this forward, one more step is, can we reproduce in the wild? Somebody takes it and runs with it. What do they actually get? So I think that's where the rubber hits the road. And I want to belabor this point a little bit. In all of these exercises that I'm going to show you, it doesn't end at the paper. It doesn't end at the GitHub. It has to be reproducible so that the community can really use it. Exactly what Chetan said yesterday. How do we actually show the impact? So that's where we are. And Josephine, along with several others in iHarp, are actually going through this painstaking process of taking the 5 algorithms, reproducing it. And now we are very close. I think we are almost done. And we are able to reproduce them. And we are ready with the publication, with the GitHub that you can use. And we'll have links available very soon. So I think that's the point that I want to drive home, that our institutes are not going to stop at, here's the paper, do what you with it. And I think all of us have found these situations where we go to the paper, something doesn't work. Now, it may happen, the models change, libraries change, and things can happen, but at least we do our due diligence. So that was the first application case. The second example I wanted to share is relationship between sea ice and land ice. So I told you a lot about ice sheets melting, and there's also sea ice, but these communities don't talk to each other, not as much as you would imagine. So ice sheet melting, imagine if you have a glass of water and you have some ice cubes in it, the ice cubes melt, it doesn't change the volume of the glass, right? The water will not flow over. So that's how people think of sea ice. They think, sea ice is there, it's not going to change the sea level. If I add a new block of ice in there, then it will spill over, right? So that's how people think of ice sheets melting. So if ice sheet breaks off, goes into the glass of water, sea level rises. But if it's sea ice already in there, it won't spill the glass. But the reality is there is a relationship between them. So I like to call this picture as the heartbeat of Antarctic. One of our students created this with 20 years of satellite data. And this is the melt and reformation of the sea ice around the Antarctic. And this is a phenomena that happens every year, just like you would imagine, summer, winter, sea ice forming, and so on. But as you can see around it, it's like a blanket around the Antarctic. So if that blanket goes away, the ice sheets will melt more. So that was our hypothesis when we started with the study, that the sea ice actually blankets around the Antarctic. So if it blankets around the Antarctic, we wanted to study the relationship between the sea ice and land ice. So now what we have is we actually have an algorithm that looks at anomalous melts in the sea ice, and what's the connection of that anomalous melt to the land ice. And we have a model and everything that was published, and it was presented at Six Spatial. And these QR codes actually will lead you to the tools and the GitHub with the publications and so on. I'll have the QR codes at the end as well. So the takeaway from here was that this was a very skeptical view of the community, that they did not think that this was an important connection to study, but we were actually able to validate portions of Antarctic where there was melt happening, and we could actually identify anomalous sea ice melt as well. So that was a very rewarding moment for us to find some of these connections as well. So this tool is available as well. So the other example I wanted to talk was the glacier calving and the iceberg drift analysis. As I mentioned, if the glacier breaks off, goes into the sea, it's direct impact to sea level rise. It's very important to study. And if you have glaciers going around in the water, I'll give you the Titanic example, right? I mean, you don't want glacier and big icebergs the size of Manhattan in the water near a big ship. So it's very important for maritime security, but also important for understanding the sea level impact. The challenge here that we had is the images change very fast. Like the images that you see on the my left is they have like all of these tiny cracks and things like that. It's exceptionally hard to annotate. Anybody who has done a computer vision segmentation project, they know how hard it gets when your data is very messy like that. So we didn't have the data. We didn't have the annotation. So the students had to actually go dig into it, create annotation algorithms, and do a lot of fine tuning. And then as you're tracking the movement, you actually have to track the movement in the ocean, which has its own dynamics, right? You have environmental factors, you have the physics that you have to incorporate. So we actually had to develop these algorithms which incorporate the physics and the environmental factors into the movement. So there's already a physics equation, but then you also want to incorporate your AI into it and see where it's going to be in the next few days. So incorporating the movement and the physics was a very interesting problem. So we are able to track that. And again, the tool is available here along with the publications that we've had. And the student actually recently presented in CVPR and got like a lot of good questions and suggestions, because this is a novel application which even the polar science community has not deeply studied. Another application that I want to mention is the LLM engine bandwagon, if you will. But the way we used it is, in all of our studies, we have to do validation, right? Like I think you all would be doing it as well. So we do algorithmic evaluation and say our algorithm performs such and such accuracy, AUC, whatever. But we also do ground truth validation. So I gave you the example of the Antarctic melt, and we said, oh, it was happening in Western Antarctic. But somebody had to dig in all of those papers to identify. But if you make a claim in your paper, how can you validate it with an LLM engine? So we actually have a tool now that you make a claim, it'll go look at papers and see whether your claim is valid and match it to some of the existing papers so that it helps you with the ground truth validation. In addition, as you're doing this, you can do other things as well. You can extract features from this paper and see if there's causal behavior in them. So one of our students, Sahara, who worked with Jianwu, is exploring that aspect. We're also looking at how can we take this forward and identify data sets. So when we started in iHeart, one of the biggest problems was we didn't know where the data sets are and which location they are. And of course, we have to do a lot of conversations with our partners. But we are working towards identifying geocoded data sets. So if you want to study the Northeast Greenland, what are the papers there and what data sets are available there? So these are supplementary tools that can help research, and these are generalizable. So they can help with any discipline. We've done benchmarking for polar science, but these can help with many other types of applications. I'm testing this with deepfake detection work as well. So this is going to be very, very interesting and helpful. A lot of team members on this as well. So the Python package is available for the claim validator. PolarKD, which does the causal study, is also available, so you can explore some of these. So the end glacial, I'm going to come back to the under the ice. So you looked at the surface of the ice, but under the ice, all of these layers are forming. What we eventually want to get at is, what are the demarcations under the ice? Like what ice is coming from the ice age, what ice is more recent. The reason this is important is if you understand the under ice and the ice age and so on, you can actually predict far into the future of how the climate will be. What are the climate changes and climate resilience things that are happening. I'm not going to use the words that are, we are not studying at this point. So essentially what happens is a field scientist will go in the field, dig up a core, and they can actually validate these layers. But you can't dig up so many cores, right? You have to be able to come up with these layers. So what you can do is you can predict the layers and then track them back to the actual core somebody has dug up to validate. So there's a way to physically validate it. But ideally what we want to do is annotate all of this with AI. Now we know that if I want to be able to predict all of this with AI, what do I need? Testing data, training data, right? There is no testing and training data. So how do we annotate this? So that was the first big problem that we tackled. We had several of these end glacial images. What we now have are algorithms that actually help us quantify whether our annotations are good or not. If I don't have expert label data, I cannot annotate and say my annotation is good because I don't have a benchmark expert data. So what we now have are metrics that help us to identify if our annotation is good. The way we do that is we look at intersections of these flight paths. And if we have been able to annotate the flight path intersections, that means we got the layer across multiple images, which is what we want eventually, is not just a single image annotated, but multiple of these images that span across the entire flight path. This is just one element of this project, which is under the ice, which is end glacial layers. In addition, there is also a project in iHeart, which is for bed mapping, which Jianbu and others are working on, which is for predicting bed map where there is no flight path. So if you don't have the flight path, how do you predict that? So that's a separate project. So this particular project was very interesting because the annotations are very fine-grained. So if you look at the tree rings, can you actually count them by your eye? If you have a tree ring, some expert actually in NASA have semi-automatic or manual algorithms which actually look at these layers physically with your eye and they try to annotate them. So you've gone away, a huge way from that, and we're able to annotate some of these. A very interesting challenge because we never had the expert annotation. So that was a challenge there. Now, these are just a few projects, but just looking at the different elements that I mentioned to you, a whole set of algorithms are there, a whole set of applications are there. I welcome you to go to the QR code and you'll see several of the tools, and we are adding more as we validate them and so on. So I told you about the highs, several of the highs. I'll keep the QR code for a second. I saw some people trying to get that. And I just gave a flavor of them. We also had a grant from AWS, kind of a pretty big grant for cloud computing, and we tested several of these things on AWS. And I want to share with you some of the lows across the projects and across the implementation, across scalability, and so on. And I think you'll see these across institutes as well, or across projects. And then I'll tell you the highs in the horizon again. So when we were doing the cloud computing, apologies for the fine-grained thing in there, but I'll just give you the key takeaways from here. Cloud can handle things very fast. You can spin up machines very quickly. You can expand your scale very quickly. It has all of the advanced architectures. You can get new architectures every day. You have a good stability. You don't have to worry about the power going off or whatever, right? Cooling, heating. The flip side of it is you have to be able to ingest the data. You have to be able to be, use the features that you want, some packages that you want, maybe from a different domain, they are not there. Very, very archaic. You might have legacy packages that you have to use that polar science community is using or some other community is using. And there's some latency. None of these are insurmountable. I think the biggest challenge is your institutional readiness. Now, when you actually go to work with AWS Cloud, you don't always work directly with AWS. You work with a reseller. I don't know how many of you have worked with resellers. It depends on how ready your institution is to work with the reseller and how good that reseller is. Now, what we did is we partitioned our AWS allocations into several projects, gave to the students. Some students will burn through that allocation, $5,000, $10,000 in 2 days because the data was so massive and they were just trying to process it. Others are not so much. And by the time we get to add it to the student's account, new allocation, we are billed. I'm sorry, I'm getting excited with this. We get billed with new allocations. And that goes to our grant account. So I'm telling you the nitty-gritty of this, but that tells you the complexities. It looks like everything is shiny and new and let's use cloud, everybody, but there are internal challenges that come along the way. So we were able to deploy and run several of our applications, but the long-term sustainability of cloud depends entirely on the budget you have. How much budget do you have? And you can burn through cycles like very quickly in experimentation. So our primary platform now is high-performance computing, not cloud. We did several of the experiments in cloud, but my hope was that they'll be available on cloud for the long-term use, but we are making them available through these other platforms and the toolkit interfaces that we shared with you. Okay, so now I want to come to the open science. We've all been talking about making this available, having the impact. But when you actually try to do open science in the wild, a lot of challenges come up. You obviously have different research priorities. Students want to keep doing their research. They just want to keep writing these new algorithms. They want to get to their paper. They don't want to make the tool available for long term. That's not their priority. Their priority is my 5 publications, I'm going to be out, right? Our students work really well on those things too. Oftentimes, students and researchers do not understand what are the requirements to make the open science happen. They may not have familiarity with open science and FAIR, like the colleagues at UMCs that we work with, we are actually actively working with them to build this knowledge from the ground up. What are the requirements of open science? How can you design systems that are ready for open science? They do require proficiency in platforms, GitHub and Zenodo and so on. And pretty much all the domains that you work with will have different, ways that they put things out. So they don't agree with this, especially in multi-domain problems. And anybody who's supporting open science, they may not be from your domain, or they may not even be core computer science professionals, but they have to understand the details of the algorithms as well. And there might be proprietary data and institutional things that have to happen. And oftentimes, when you didn't start with the right model for open science, you have to do a post-hoc analysis, which is even harder. That here's my tool, I want to make it open science, which is what I was giving you an example in the supraglacial lake annotation that we did with 6 spatial cup. Now we are doing the reproducibility aspects. So a lot of our people actually did hand holding of several of these tools, and I'll show you that in the horizon of what was the good end goal and end result for that. But it's not without problems. So there's a horizon, and just hang tight for that. So now coming to the horizon, we do all of this fun stuff. We do all of these interesting projects, but we have to be able to tell a story to non-scientific people as well. Not just to people like us. I can give you like a 1-hour lecture on the AI model, but I want to have takeaways for you. And if it's a community which includes many different disciplines and even decision makers, how do I communicate to them the urgency of things? So we did a very interesting project with an imaging research center at UMBC, and they helped us model an ice cave museum, a polar ice museum. And we worked with the artists who rendered everything, and we have data dashboards in the VR headsets, and the image turned out like this. We also have a physical museum now where we had a lot of actually people coming through, and there were interactive displays to convey this. The lessons for us from here were that sometimes as scientists, we are very specific that my parameter should be shown exactly like this. But artists have some liberty to tell their story. So in this video that I've linked here, the artist actually took the story of the polar ice melt. She actually took the data. It's a very nice video. I really recommend you take a look. Data is flowing through. She has, she actually took the data that we had of the sea ice melt, and the data is flowing through. And she told the story of the ice melting and how the sea level is rising. And then she transitioned to a story about a woman in Baltimore and how her barber shop was flooded. And it was a very interesting connection from the polar regions to the sea level rise to the actual impact on people. So these are the types of things that help us connect to non-disciplinary people, decision makers, policy makers who should be aware of this. And when you put the VR headset on, I was talking to them and I said, it should be a visceral reaction to somebody who's in there and the water is rising. They're with the VR headset and the water is rising. So we're still working through this, and this is the horizon. And the physical, the museum display is there. It's active, and we are planning to bring it to different places. My colleague actually went to Vienna, and she tried to display some elements of that as well. So I think for us as institute directors and leaders, it's exceptionally important that we convey the impact in all types of ways. And I think the horizon is incomplete without talking about, I should probably wrap up real quick, talking about the workforce impact that we all create. And remember, the workforce impact has to be from all different disciplines. So we created 2 different programs through iHarp and through the Skype program, where we have the data science undergrad scholars and graduate scholars, graduate fellows. Both are funded. through many of these different projects. It's not a single project that funds them, but many different projects that fund them. And the idea is that my lab works with many of these different centers to recruit scholars from different disciplines. So it's not just all computer science students, it's students from all of these different disciplines. And we identify mentors from disciplines, match the students, they complete the projects, and they have amazing outcomes. They've done posters and fun projects. I'm going to show you one of these fun projects where a student just looked at gamification of the iceberg life cycle. And she created a game where penguins can be tracked, and the more penguins that you can count, you get more points and things like that. So they come up with their own creativity, and the student is now doing a master. So many of these undergrad students went on to masters or to PhD even, and it's really excellent outcomes from these students. And we actually had high schoolers as well who are going on to doing research. We recently had a high schooler who looked at wildfire prediction. And she presented so well. I think our PhD students were saying, "Are you a high schooler?" And it was really, really fun to watch some of them. So I think students are the biggest horizon that can come out of this. But I promised you that I'll show you the open science pipeline and what's the horizon there. And really kudos to Josephine and Achala, one of our staff members who really did the hand-holding here. So they actually did an assessment of 12 open science repositories and platforms. They mapped the features that are required for each of these repositories and identified which would be the best repositories that we should use. It's a big project to just even do that because there's so many different tools available. In the implementation phase, they looked at 30 plus multidisciplinary project teams across iHeart. They looked at 100 plus artifacts and research products, and they did so many screenings. I cannot even tell you the number of meetings they would have done. So that's why I called it open science in the wild. It's nice when you have open science principles, but when you implement it, that's where the real rubber hits the road. And now we have the community-facing toolkits and GitHub and PyPI. They're really well tested out. So we are doing this gradually, not like everything. I mean, of course, all the GitHub is out, whichever is linked in the paper is out. But these cards that you'll see on the toolkit, these are very well validated and checked. And then the application portals are also being checked so that you can run some of the applications. So if you have feedback, please feel free to email me or iHarp@UMBC. We'd love to hear from you on that. So I think that's a big horizon for us, that we're able to show the community outcome. There are some tools like PISM is a polar science tool, which one of our colleagues in Alaska has created. That's already been used by hundreds of people. And they're actually doing their own science with it. And Pinnacle is another one for the bed mapping that is being used. So some of them are very well used already, and we're hoping others will catch on. So the other horizon, I think, is just our students going out into the community, the continuity of the ecosystem. So several student defenses and internships and so on. I think that's the real horizon. So with that, I want to thank all of my iHeart research team members, and I'll be happy to talk more in the questions. And I'm sorry I went a little bit over. Thank you.
Any good questions from the? Okay, we can do this in the panel then. Take a 10-minute break. So, okay. Cliff wants us back in 5 minutes, so we'll do that. But I should just take a break, some have something to drink, and we'll be back. 10 minutes. 10 minutes, I guess. We'll do 10 minutes. 10:40.
Don't you change your curve? You change your curve. Oh, do we want to? Yeah. Please, yeah. Well, maybe here's, is it you want to see?
How many chairs do that? Six?
Six.
Five. And then a moderator.
I know, but why are the chairs back so far?
No, because it's not flat. The chair will fall.
Oh. It's I think it's not good to have so close to the back. The trick is just going to safely get up here. It's not gonna be sitting. Be asked for 21.
Yeah, I would say if he has issues that are more nice and there's no more dominance.
Alright. Not a micromanager, really, but at this point, they can't.
Yeah, they cannot. Yeah.
So. Ready? Like that. A little bit. Okay. Well, that point doesn't belong. I'm the chair.
That is okay, moderate, don't do that, I think that's.
Yeah.
Cliff, you will be.
Would you envision yourself sitting this, sitting or standing? Cliff, do you envision yourself sitting or standing?
Okay, sorry, I had to,
That's okay. Do you envision yourself sitting or standing?
I'm probably gonna sit for a
Okay.
bit, I don't know, but
Yeah,
I'll.
that's what I was
I can-
thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this the
Yeah,
okay
yeah.
location for you? Okay.
Okay. This is great, thank you.
No.
I'm going to make it as quick as possible.
No, it's
So-
fine, we are fine, I think.
That we can have,
You take 1 hour, I
yeah.
guess, we wrap up by 11:45, it should be. Do you want this on?
Yeah, this is fine for,
Yeah, so I have to connect this.
yeah, and one of the panel members asked to be concluded at 11:30. So we'll let me make sure, some might be drifting off. Hold on.
Don't be alarmed, not gonna hurt you.
Yeah.
It's coming up, but because if in front of the thing,
Oh, let me get out of the way.
Also, yeah. We can have you guys. Right?
Oh, yeah. I actually, can I make it look like a UI?
Yeah.
You're a shoulder. movement.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It's not a very clear graphic. Because we are sad, so I would say it's like it's.
I think we just.
Yeah, if you want to explain it out.
Good.
Yeah, then that's. Okay.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. So,
Hopefully we get the panel members assembled up here.
Okay. Turn this back on. There we
That's
go. Now it's on.
All right. And when I get the panel members assembled up here, we're running a little behind schedule.
Do you want me to corral people?
Yeah, we're corralling.
Yeah. Finding corral. Oh.
All right, we're gonna start up with our final panel of the conference. We could get the 5 speakers up here, please. Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe
maybe I can sit up here.
2 guys.
two guys.
Yes, come on.
1, 2, yeah, 5.
Yes, come on.
Oh, yeah, mother here.
Yes. Oh, excuse me, that's it. Mark.
Got one more here. You got any more? That's it? One more.
I'll show one.
Remembering this will be everybody, I think.
Showing.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, come on over. The sooner we start, the sooner we end.
You're not using Zoom for this.
What?
Sorry.
Not hearing it using.
Yeah, I have to turn that off.
Okay, so I'll turn off Zoom.
Oh, now I see.
So I guess people
Yeah.
may not want these things to be recorded. There is one person. Oh. There's one person online. I'll turn off the. So no
Oh,
recording.
Florence, yeah.
So Florence is online, so she can hear, but no recording, so feel free.
I'll do the best I can on hearing, but I think it'll be too complicated for you
Yeah.
to listen. Too
Okay.
much feedback, okay?
Tweet, sorry. Yeah, I think this should be good.
So
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. We're at the final part of this wonderful conference. And my name's Cliff Jacobs. I am the moderator of the panel. Some of you don't know me. I worked for the National Science Foundation for 30 years and did research prior to that. What I would like to do is maximize the time to get the answers to these questions on the screen up here. So everybody has heard the wonderful presentations from all of the PIs here. So we're going to just skip that. And what I'm going to ask them to do is to respond to, I'd like to start with the second question, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But if they just say which project they were part of and then begin to answer the question, I think that would be the most efficient. I also recognize that some of us have airlines flights and we have to leave early. So I want to make sure that I know for sure you might be the first responder, but we're respecting your time. And the reason I'd like to start with the first question is because I still can't get rid of my NSF hat and wondered whether when these awards have made, they've all made great progress and they accomplished that in different ways. And I'm wondering whether when you started thinking about this project, you had all the experience to now, and you've had some different views of how the future of the HDR would progress. You've learned a lot. And to me, I always care about the fact, what did we learn when you fund something like this? Each one takes a different approach. You hope they're all successful. And I think we're going to learn a lot from that. So I will start with that first question about what is your views now compared to what they actually were when you wrote the proposal? What did you learn in that process?
You mean the second question?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Hi, everyone. Still Tanya Berger-Wolf, Imagomics, representing Imagomics Institute. There are two things, I think, and they kind of go in the opposite direction. I was thinking about what did we learn when we were writing the proposal in the middle of the pandemic versus like how we think about all of this one now. And I mean, the elephant in the room, with all of us, one of the things that also happened, not just the pandemic, but LLMs, right? Gen AI and LLMs have happened in the middle. So that has changed things or not. So the kind of, on the one hand, the big thing that we learned when we were writing the proposal, we're like, oh my God, can we even do it? Can we get to the point where we're saying like, oh, this is this species because, or this is doing this function because, like here are the traits, to discover some traits that humans have not seen, have not observed, have not realized. And when we were writing, a lot of biologists weirdly, a lot of scientists were skeptical that AI could do this. Today, there is nobody skeptical. We're way on the other side of it. Like I'm having some conversations where we're like, well, just a limit. I'm like, we don't have the data. Well, can't the AI just produce the data? I'm like, whoa, like no, right? Absolutely not. And so we've gone, but that actually these conversations were about a year ago, where AI can do everything. And this, even in this last year, we've gone through AI can do everything to this is an overhyped, resource guzzling industry, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. So I was just at Ecological Society of America last week. We were giving plenary, doing tons of workshops and sessions and panels on AI, different aspects of AI and ecology. And there was also and I have a picture of it, I actually should have put it, a kind of whiteboard with how has AI changed your life? Prompt. And people were like just using markers to write things. And most of them were negative. And so I think in this like cycle of investment, we've gone from like, this is ambitious, can we do it? To then developing these methods that are not LLM, that are not Gen AI, but everybody's saying like, oh no, AI can do it. To now coming to a realization, no, AI cannot do it, shouldn't, not that kind of AI. We still have a job to do, but it is actually super feasible. We are now coming to the point where we just all of us, I mean, I've heard all of the talks, all of us are on the cusp of like true scientific discoveries. We've finally built up the tools. We've finally built up the infrastructure. We've finally built up the understanding to deliver on the promise of the proposals that we were writing, to do those scientific discoveries. And I feel like we're like a little bit of a punch that just as we're ready, we're out of air, right? So that's kind of the one side of what has changed. The other side, and a massive understanding that kind of aligned with it, is there is no AI without data. What enabled all the AI revolution, the AI institutes, the massive hype of AI is harnessing the data revolution. And we still have lots of work to do to harness data, to build AI-ready data infrastructure, to build it in a way that enables the answers to the questions we want to ask. Not just, okay, let's go and digging in the data that we have, we'll find something.
And thanks for Tanya. This is very nice opening. You literally covered on most of the things I want to cover.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so that also just shows that even in FCP3, we focus on the three domains, as our baseline: physics, astronomy, and neuroscience. But we just share a lot of the challenge in common in biodiversity and in Arctic data and GIS, and even in the theory part for the material science. To me, I want to comment on my personal thing I learned while we write this proposal. It's interesting process that I usually just work with people in my field, physics, but because of the HDR, because of the proposal, I have to step out to understand what interdisciplinary collaboration truly work. Yeah. And this is also one of the major things I learned through the past few years of operations. So you need to keep an open mind and to listen to challenging point of view and using a different angle and to find the commonality between different approach and eventually you can collaborate. So these are the most important thing I learned. And the challenges we saw have been many of these. I have to agree that LLM and generative AI really bring a side of solution for that, and many people are excited about that. But it just helps us to face to the frontier of the science field we are changing here to deeper to another level. So we currently have to think about after these years of operations, we all build beautiful tools that we deliver the science we wrote in this proposal, and we are ready to go bigger and how we could make this happen. I think this is probably have to require me to go even more open mind, go beyond just the 3 domains we have. Yeah.
So you just heard from me. I don't know if this is.
Yeah.
You were excited.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh. So you just heard from me a bunch about iHeart. So I'll say a couple of things, and I think we all will echo many of these things that you're hearing. When the proposal was initially being written, I was department chair, and I think I remember the main focus was just making sure all the right people are on the team, bringing in the right people. We thought that, having the right people, the right polar scientists and the right community would help us get to the data. And it was clear that there is data. But as I was talking in my data story, what we quickly realized is not all data is ready. Not all data is adequate. It's not that it's not collected, it's just not ready for us to use. And building those tools rely heavily on the data. So through the years, obviously, we've been able to create these tools and data sets. But even today, the good data quality is hard to find, and we constantly go back and forth on that. On the other hand, I think there's an operational side to running an institute. It's really like being a department chair again, and making sure that all operations are running fine. And when you do all of this and you build this amazing community, it's important to sustain it. How do we sustain it, right? So I don't think that it's automatic and we can say, well, the community will come together, but there has to be programs like these that keep at least the community sustaining. And the last bit I'll say is, it's very easy to say that AI will solve all the problems. It won't. I was hiking through the Pacific Northwest this past few weeks ago, and it was just amazing to see my phone won't work, my email won't work, the ChatGPT that I was used to will not work. I was still relying on paper trail maps, and it was just amazing to see that geoscience in many of the communities is still on the ground. So there's a huge leap that still has to happen, and I don't know. I think when we write our paper, we have to communicate to NSF and other agencies that there needs to be continued investment to bring these communities together and make that leap from science to the ground, the science that we are doing.
Can we record this conversation so we'll write this paper?
Well, I think that, are we recording this? Yeah.
It is being,
I stopped recording because I wanted.
That's too bad.
Open conversation.
You could record it and not share it.
no,
I'm okay.
yeah.
It's up to you guys.
I agree with you. This is probably the most interesting part of the whole conference, is what you've learned.
Well,
Write something, but you don't share it with them.
yeah,
Just don't say bad words.
All right, be careful then.
or we can do a private recording, like separate. So they can-
Yeah, it will be with me. So you can always ask something to be deleted. Oh, maybe it is. Maybe it is.
This-
Okay.
Good.
Okay, I thought I did turn it off, but apparently it seems to be.
Stop that we say.
Okay. Don't know if it's pausing. Yeah, no, it's on.
No, it's not.
It's
It's still,
seems to be on.
Yeah. Great.
yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think a lot of great points have been made. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Xiaowen Wang. I was earlier part of the program representing my guy. I'm also the primary guy responsible for your alcoholic drinks. So, yeah, to build on what was said, I think the thing I learned which was not so deeply appreciated when I was writing the proposal, was the people part. To bring people from different communities with the different incentives and the backgrounds together to actually act on the same page. I would say I underestimated how much the challenge was. Not because the proposal was written during the COVID days, but just because how hard this is. And I think to NSF, given the progress we have made, I think this might be the most valuable part of this enterprise going forward. The people have been brought to this convergence ecosystem. And if there will not be funding sustaining this community, it would be a huge loss of the reward coming from investment is actually what people want. So that's, I think, the first point. The second point, because Cliff was on the external advisory board, I learned from him and other members of the board is how do you demonstrate the whole is more than the sum of its parts. And this is obviously oftentimes focused on science, and clearly all the 5 institutes are pursuing convergence science, meaning how could you demonstrate scientific progress could be achieved through this approach. And I learned this is not easy. This is a very difficult show. Convergence is by intention, or it's by accident, or it's by coordination. And why these institutes are coming together the way we have been doing our work, actually not just correlated with the results. We're sharing, obviously, we're all excited by the progress, but actually by the net sensitivity of this investment in the consumer. So that's the second thing. Obviously, there are really, I think, strong evidence, results, progress along these lines, but I learned not in a sort of straightforward. I think there's a good set of insights that could be gleaned from this learning experience. The final point I would make is how much synergy across the 5 institutes I've learned. Obviously, this is you could say, from my perspective, a pleasant surprise. At a very technical level, at least 3 institutes are dealing with geospatial data, as we're part of the geospatial data revolution. And all 5 institutes are actually taking critical spatial thinking into their work. You know, we were talking about architecture. This is work. You know, thinking creatively across spatial representations from molecules to the universe. So that's just the intellectual, very basic commonality. But beyond that, from the technology, of course, from the convergent science elements. So just incredible synergies. And I think this should be recognized as well as appreciated by NSF, because if they invest in a community like this, how do we amplify the fact that the synergies are really powerful to especially prepare for the next generation. That's not good.
Yes, okay. I think most people have said a lot of the things in my mind also. I will echo that a big part of what I learned is the time and investment it takes. And I think what has been really special is that this opportunity created a protected space for all this time for us to be able to bring different communities together and have the time to talk to each other and learn and understand each other's problems and come up with new ideas as a result of that. And that protected space is rare and special, and I think it really should be something that we find a way to promote and continue. It's not easy to do these things, but what, you know, I really echo what Xiaowen said about the people being important and finding it. We always said in our leadership team, we have great students, great faculty. Let's put them in a room together. Let's seed some ideas, have some conversations. And seeing how people really took that opportunity and kind of rose to it because they genuinely wanted to and were interested in each other's problems. And the computer scientists and applied mathematicians got excited about many-body physics and quantum mechanics and materials. And the materials people got excited about, I would say more than, you know, plugging in some model from some software package, but just actually trying to understand how the methods worked from first principles. And I feel like we just ended up creating this group of students, faculty, whose perspective has really changed as a result of that. And seeing that evolution take place, it's been very rewarding in many ways. And I think that, you know, in terms of finding ways to promote and let that keep happening, I think is most important. This is a really, I mean, it's an exciting opportunity. It has been exciting. It continues to be. And I echo that. I think a lot of us feel like, wow, we're just getting started. We want to be able to keep doing this. We want to be able to keep thinking in these non-traditional, out-of-the-box ways. And it's not only great science, but great fun. And I think that it does result in producing a different mentality. So I'll just kind of echo that observation quite a bit, and say that I hope that that's something that is understood by NSF. I hope it's something that's understood as like, this is something that we find very valuable.
Add a number to this. I want to add a number to kind of the people side of things. Yeah, we're all building scientific discoveries and tools and infrastructures. Amazing. For the people side, among our 5 institutes collectively, we have over 1,000 researchers in science and engineering, right, collectively. And that, again, that are part of core, part of the community, part of those who've been trained, the next generation, over 1,000 in just 5 years. And as by NSF report, every year there is 45-ish thousand PhDs nationwide that are awarded in science and engineering, across all of science and engineering. 1,000 actually is a large number compared to that. It's not a negligible thing. We're building truly a community that is not represented anywhere else.
Let me follow up with this. First of all, you confirmed what I suspected, that there was not a straight line between point A, when you wrote the proposal, and now. It's been a very interesting line, and you helped us understand that. Also, as an observer, I think you've all produced very interesting stuff. But the one uniform thing that you really helped with is workforce development, big time, and the publications that have come out of your awards. And the publications are important because in the ecosystem of the university, this is important. But you also look now, and I'm going to ease into that first question, is, okay, there's this galloping pony for harnessing the digital revolution. And we understand industry is spending a lot of money, so is the government. There is a role for the universities in this, to stay on the back of the galloping pony, to be actually make a contribution. What do you think that the role of the university is in this very fast-moving environment that we're in right now?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question, and I think that it's sort of gonna tie this a little bit back to what we were just talking about, which is this idea of the universities serving as the home of these protected spaces where we can work with students, we can, yes, do workforce development, allow them to explore, allow them to learn the basics, learn to become good contributing researchers and critical thinkers and scientists, and do that in a way that is I want to say this the right way, but somehow free from some of the things that will constrain your life when you go into industry, free from being tied to a profit motive, free from doing things in ways that are very fundamental and important. And we understand that a lot of what develops at the university stage, only some of those ideas maybe ultimately get translated. We want more of them too, but the ones that do end up being very impactful and powerful, and just recognizing that that's the process. I mean, that's how developments and new ideas kind of emerge, is having that. I think we've had that understanding of the different roles for a while, and I do think a lot of what we heard about, partnerships with industry and universities, I think these are very exciting and good opportunities. I would hope that this is done in a way that is thoughtful and remembers the mission of a university as well, in terms of workforce development, education, letting students be students and trying things, having the opportunity to, I look at our HDR students, and it's funny, most of them are, I think they feel like they're co-advised, and they're co-advised by their main advisor at their university, and then somebody at another institution who they get on Zoom meetings with every week, and they just naturally do this, and so having that space is super valuable. In a world where, I go to my material science conferences now, and this is recent, all of a sudden, I see, all of a sudden I started seeing people from Google and Microsoft showing up, and it didn't used to be that way, but they're there now, and they're building in-house data sets, and it's actually good for us, I think, in the universities in many ways. They bring a new perspective, they bring a different thinking. And that challenges us in a lot of ways. But it also reminds me to think about what our strength is and what it is we can do, and think about it. Some of the, I think, ideas that I tried to share during our presentation, I kind of wanted to highlight that thinking that we brought when we were able to spend time thinking about group theory and symmetry and machine learning, and how to combine these in ways that are that really require both dedicated domain and data and probabilistic modeling in ways that would have been, hard to emerge otherwise. So I think keeping that in mind is important. Yeah, I could go on, but I'll stop there, so.
We're going this way?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Can I agree with, what Alex has already, explained out of the, our connection?
Mic closer, just closer to your mouth.
Okay, yeah. Very quickly, just three points. First, I would say, university is well positioned to do foundational research compared to what industry is doing, especially in this very financially still closer.
Yes.
Wow. Especially in this very evolving environment of changing funding landscape. I think industry we know is really powerful in what they do. And a good example there as a comparison is you consider industry, for instance, doing research to really get planes to be rollouts and scalable and ready to go. But the university is in the context of creating the next design of plane, as opposed to also building planes as university, as industry has been doing at scale. I think the second point is we need to recognize, because university is highly involved in preparing the next generation, the workforce, which actually is going to industry. So I think we need to be thinking in the way that the workforce going to the industry requires scientific rigor. So it's not supposed to be driven by shortcuts, by various factors beyond science. So we are in the university preparing the younger generation with the scientific rigor needed. Once they get into the industry, they could apply that rigor and the scientific thinking and foundation for the work they're doing. So the third point is the university is also well positioned for fostering work that spanning boundaries. Again, this is in our education system, not institutions are doing this in a uniform way, but I think for especially this community, what we have learned is how do we do that at universities that could really help promote convergence. So those, I think, three areas could be more tied into what a university could do well compared to what an industry does.
So I think we're in a very interesting place to rethink what academia's value is. And we would all love to wake up, 2028 and it's back to usual as they were. It's not going to happen regardless of what year we are in. We're seeing that all around. So it's a very important question. In terms of the research and industry's value, we do have to partner, we do have to show impact, and we do have to show partnerships with industry. But that's with a caveat. What do I mean by that? So I'll give you an example. In 2016, Jeffrey Hinton made a claim that you will not need radiologists. AI will look at images and X-ray images and tell you everything, and you don't probably need radiologists. In 2026, when they revisited that claim, today there are more radiologists than there were in 2016. So there are some claims that have value, some claims that don't. And I think we have to take everything with a grain of salt. When we look at the AI use and availability in industry, there are bands. There are some industry, sectors who have the most available AI cycles, and they are just leaping ahead. There are others that don't, right? So there's a whole, swath of experiences there as well. In terms of academics, we are not solving just a big business problem for today and re-engineering the heck out of it. We are solving foundational science that will propel us for many, many generations to come. And that's how we should be thinking about it. Interdisciplinary science is not a traditional business problem where you have one spreadsheet or one type of spreadsheet or one type of customer. It's a lot of different things coming together. Each of our problems, each of our institutes solves those problems, right? Interdisciplinary problems. I think the value of academia is really in those interdisciplinary spaces, and even in disciplinary spaces where you're really looking 10 years ahead, leaps. The place where I think we need to show our value is telling our stories. Now, imagine the brains that we put behind solving, Nobel Award winning research. If you could put that same mind to telling our stories better, I think that would make a huge difference. We have not done a good job at that. I don't know if you all know, but the LASIK eye surgery was accidentally discovered by a graduate student who was working late in the lab, and he messed up the instrument and it went in his eye, and it ended up with an accident, but discovered LASIK eye surgery. I'm not saying that we should all do that. You don't want to have accidents happen in the lab, but my point is that when you have graduate students with time and with motivation, they will discover things. But are we telling those stories right? How many of you know about this LASIK eye surgery story? Or how many of you know about the Google story behind it, how graduate students worked on this one paper? So I think that's where we need to show our value and impact.
So I try to recall what happened recently from my industry friends. They asked the referral. They are looking for students, good students, who are not just using cloud or Gemini or any kind of AI tools to cook out their work, but they really understand the domain knowledge behind. I also look at the engineering students in University of Washington, just a small sample. Might not generalize to nationwide, but just look at what happened. Students have a challenge to look for a job, while they used to be just easily get a job before they graduate. The interview process really in this big company, we talk about IT company, Google, Amazon, Meta, they are looking for people who are not just have the knowledge or the technical skill to solve winning a well-defined problem, but they are looking for people who can think close the discipline, close the boundary that beyond the boundary that can solve the more complex and real world problems. So where can you have the education system to grow such a workforce? And that's university. The industry will not spend their money to raise inexperienced people to grow, and they would like to spend on people who can bring more productivity results for them immediately. So university will maintain this role to create a workforce and provide this high quality personal power to the world, not just for the industry but also for the academic. So I think this will maintain true and even more severe. But the way that we train students in university will change, because it's so easy to get an answer and from the AI. And if I just look at the young generation, that students who do the project, they can turn in the project so easy. But it's not necessary it's the correct or valid result. So we are talking about AI literacy, how we really train young generations that how you should learn using the new tool to learn better, but not just as a general result, but really as you can use AI to train your thoughts in more critical thinking, produce your result, put into the AI, and then ask AI evaluate or change me back. So it's a habit we want to train the young generation to learn. So also the ethic is really important. How you can use AI, but try to amplify your original idea, but not just clone or accidentally just steal other people's IP. So these have to be trained when you are in an environment and you allow people to point out some mistake you made, but you still feel safe. And that's university's role. So I think more closer partnership with the industry and university has been reviewed right now. And in university, usually students will not determine their majors when they are freshmen. And then they will decide their domains. And when in the end of freshman, they step into sophomore or junior. But the trend could be in the directions and more encourage on minors or double majors. It become possible and easier for people to do because using AI, you are able to learn, accelerate your learning to extract the domain area easier. So I think in summary, I would say university will continue to maintain the important role to train the young workforce through AI and partnership with industry that we want to really emphasize the AI literacy and our ethic. Also, we will train more students who could go across discipline easier.
So it's interesting that the biggest kind of differentiator is the mission of a university is to educate, which is absolutely true. I'm also I spent my entire career in public universities, most of them name brands, which have that mission to educate. I'm also I think I'm the only one who coming from the core AI side of things, the development of AI. But I'm also kind of the background that I bring into this. I'm a multilingual immigrant, as everyone's here, multilingual immigrant many times over. So that brings a very different perspective of ability to translate between frameworks, between value systems, between expertise with their limited vocabulary, but also recognizing the humility that my value system may not be your value system. And I think all of it is coming to play, not just in interdisciplinary research, but also in this context of the explosion of AI from a niche methodology to being part of everything in our lives. And there are people who are saying that, like, on the one hand, that AI will bring the dark ages of science, and because nobody will care to, like, need to understand anything anymore or learn anything because AI will do it. To the other extreme, that AI will bring the enlightenment age of the society because it will enable us to do everything and understand everything and use science. The truth is obviously in the middle. But this conversation about, sort of particularly from the AI side of things, so what's different in academia? What's different in AI for science and AI in academic setting versus AI in industry? I mean, there are two things that I would push back on this. One is, yes, it is the education. That's the university mission. But also, especially in public universities, our mission, and more broadly in science, is not just to produce solutions for industry, right? We work with partners. Our partners are not just industries. Our partners are civic societies, our government organizations, our nonprofits, NGOs, and so on and so forth, educational organizations, right? And so AI as an industry is by far the minority partner in everything that we do. And they don't even show up in most of our partnerships, questions, or whatever. So there's a lot left to ask. And the other perspective is social more broadly as an industry. They say that in tech industry, there are two V's. There is the engineer's V, which is viable, and there's the business V, which is valuable. And I would add that the research, the academic V is the visionary. And those two, there are different value and priority frameworks behind each V. The valuable for industry, as in, like, it has to produce money, right? The viable for the engineer who creates this model, and the visionary for the scientist they intersect. But there is a massive space where they live with some alignment to other value systems, but we have our own value system. And so the type of AI, the type of work that we produce is very different, is visionary, occasionally, I mean, sometimes mostly viable and occasionally valuable.
Can I add my 2 cents to this? Essentially, I'm going to draw on my experience in different fields, but I think, one of the things that I think is that I've heard all of you say is that in this, the university environment is embedded in a much bigger society, which is moving very fast. And it seems as we get older, that moves even faster. I'm not sure that's our age or whether it's really actually happening. But the main point is that I think the universities have to defend, it's incumbent upon them to defend the interests of science and workforce development in a rapidly changing environment. And by also maintaining the integrity of science, which is reproducibility, for example, ethics and other things like that. From my broader point of view, I see this as an important role of the universities in a very, very fast-moving society. Keep your voice going and make sure that it's heard widely. You'll be able to contribute in one way or another, but it seems to me that you can't drop out of the game at this point.
We're holding the tiger by its tail, and we'll keep holding on.
Okay. So we covered that. The last question, and perhaps you want to add more to those questions. That's certainly great because we've already heard some really interesting answers now and a lot of different perspectives. Success has, for all of you, have been there, and it's come in different ways. Always not quite sure how you achieved it, but I think you gave us a little insight into how you achieved that. The last question we have here is, how does this Harnessing Digital Revolution Institute impact science and society? I think you touched on a little bit, but maybe you want to answer that a little further.
I'll do short. Stanka, that's me to go. I think all of us showed the scientific discoveries that harnessing data revolution frameworks have enabled. All of us showed the next generation, building the community of current interdisciplinary scientists and training the next generation. But what also struck me, especially when Xiaowen was talking, is that it changes your mindset. And I think one of the biggest impacts, we can talk about the scientific discoveries, we can talk about the adoption of methodologies, of the use of our models by our organizations, or the number of downloads or whatever, the number of students graduating. We all have those statistics, but I think the shift, and I would say that yes, AI is moving fast, but there is a reason why this community is adapting faster. I think part of it is because the mindset is different, because we've heard stories of interdisciplinary scientists who had to start learning to think sort of outside of their comfort zone or disciplinary zone. The first time you do it, it's uncomfortable, it's interesting, or it's challenging. The 10th time you do it naturally, and it actually changes your perspective. You start seeing and looking for this opportunity, like Xiaowen talking about that, you have to do it at the beginning. And now the second half of everything that you said was about looking for these connections, generalities, cross-cutting themes. We all now do it naturally. It is a different mindset.
The HDR for impact is definitely through this interdisciplinary collaboration. But I think each institute have a slightly different approach. But I think we all are able to achieve a goal, like we are growing the community, go beyond just our original domains. Yeah. And one thing I really value is when I first have our first ecosystem conference, I look at the iGuide Xiaowen's version that I realized, wow, even in science, we could have actually built a strong bonding with the industry partners. So we learned quite a lot, like how iGuide approach, and in SCTC also try to reach out and building a partnership connection with the industry. Yeah. So this kind of aligned to the current trend of AI. Yeah. Part of it, because the AI technology is really accelerated down by the industry, that we have no choice, we have to catch up. But we are now just not catch up, but we can be part of the player to share the direction of the technology. Then we learned quite a lot how image and really the field trip that really impressed me, like how you actually can organize and all resource to collect the unique data on the web. And in physical science, we try to collect data from the extreme environment in Collider from the universe. But how we could actually make it be even more fun, accessible to public. That is really impressive how I see Xiaomi did, yeah. And in many senses, like our challenge is very similar to iHeart, because we are all doing the extreme data. So you are able to get 1,000 high school students to play and to analyze your data. And this is really just for me, it's mind blowing. Like, oh, give us the idea that HDR could also try to do that. So I think HDR ecosystem for this version, even without us with this platform, it's not naturally happening for me to accept all those information. Yeah. So I think the broad impact among us and also goes through, and maybe our next slide is also invite artists or architect to formulate our data to make it be even to a larger audience. So this is the just not internally our impact, but also go together, we can have a bigger influence.
That's a very nice summary, I think, of how we learn from each other, and the ecosystem is really amazing. And we've seen that every year. And I think I can think of several applications that we've developed in iHeart that are contributing directly to polar science, and they also have generalizability to other domains, especially the fine grained annotation and so on. But I think if I have to leave with one thing that our HDR students, and I think all of ours, has contributed is training of the next generation, is training of the students. And training is a very weak word. I think I remember one of my students, she was working on an interdisciplinary project, and she was very frustrated talking to the two domain scientists. And she said, came and said to me, "This is very hard. I cannot do this." It was so funny to like get her through that, because she was really making progress. And now, 2 or 3 years later, she's getting ready to defend and really done amazing work across disciplines. And recently I told her, you should go and check with our domain scientists, what they think about this outcome. She was like, yeah, I already set up the meeting. So I think just that natural thinking that they are developing, and it's amazing to see them extract some AI knowledge here, but abstracting it out to how the domain will be impacted, or how they should look at the data differently, and how they are making these leaps of understanding, and how they're explaining it to domain experts and receiving that knowledge back. I think that has personally been a tremendous joy to watch the advancement of our students. And I'm just looking at our students, I'm really proud of our students, how they have done these things.
I think that's the biggest benefit to society. Because if you really want to see new advances in AI and how AI is being used, that's going to be in multidisciplinary spaces. And if we don't have researchers who can understand multidisciplinary spaces, the soft and messy parts of it, you will not be able to advance. And I think that's what our students are doing, is really learning that messy science. It's not all this.
Yeah, first of all, I will say, have been really impressed by the work done by the other institutes. Of course, I got included in this ecosystem. Just cannot believe how much has been accomplished within less than 5 years. Well, the number 2 point is I see an opportunity from the iGuide experience that we could now approach a new way of conducting science. An example there is within iGuide, you would be able to now access the knowledge produced by iGuide completely online. More than 80% of the publications, data sets, models, and educational resources, software codes, these are accessible. In the past few years, we stopped asking our team members to submit their publications, the list of their publications to us. We basically tell them to the iGuide platform to contribute to knowledge elements there. And these knowledge elements are interlinked across different communities. And it's searchable and it's fed to AI. So you might have heard from Chaitan Baru, our NSF, United NSF program officer, talking about the new way of knowledge dissemination, publishing. I think from that little example, I see a tremendous opportunity from this community. We could put forward a roadmap for the next step of the ecosystem. Say, hey, there's a potential new way. This is what's reflected from the harnessing the data revolution for new knowledge production ecosystem. So I start seeing that potential from I got experience and also similar experiences from the other institutes. The third point is translation to impact. A few examples from iGuide. There are actual stakeholders and the users from society getting access to our tools and technologies and the methodologies. And aging dams, safety matters, and emergency responders coming to us to see how the capabilities coming from our project could be used in their own practice. And coastal flood zone planning, 10-year horizon policymaking is taking our methods into their planning activities. And the United Nations Sustainable Development practices are deciding our work. So I think this is one way we could connect scientific work to the broader societal benefits. And this is where, for instance, the TIP director is looking for. So how do you turn your science into actionable linkages to what society is looking for as guidance?
It's really, I mean, it's very nice to hear, wonderful how all of the institutes in their areas have been successful and really made an impact, and it's motivating and inspiring to listen to the stories. I think impacting science and society. So the tools that we've developed, the simulation tools that are AI accelerated, or some of the things I was showing with generative models, those have been, they're being picked up by industry and startups. We've been contacted, and we know they're using our models. We have visualization tools that have been developed in our within our institute that our startup company Collaborator is now using in their automated materials experimentation platforms that they've been building. So we see some of these impacts. There are, yes, the methods, the tools that we've actually made and the adoption that we're seeing in them. I guess that's one. And then two is our students. Again, we talked a lot about this, the researchers that have come out of this program. And we also see that they get recruited. They are sought after. We had a student graduate who was pulled by a startup company and then tried to get somebody else trying to poach him. So I think that the next steps after grad school, where these students go, I see, it's clear to me that their skills are valued and they're sought after. And so that's nice feedback. And then I think the final thing that I'll say is I think we created a new way of thinking about how AI or ML methods should work and should look in a physical sciences context, right? In a context that is different from natural language processing or computer vision, or, you know, where things look a little bit more like a learned inference than a traditional machine learning type of application, and ways to bring physics together with statistical learning approaches that can be powerful in and of their own. That translation, I think, is another contribution.
Well, thank you all for that. I am actually going to take the opportunity to end this session because some of us had travel plans. There's a bit of exhaustion also, including the moderator. So, but we got insight that I don't think we've got any other time in the conference. And it was really, really valuable. And it helped everybody here and certainly helped even the PIs among themselves. So we know it was recorded and it's worth looking at, but I want to thank the panel members and let us end a little early because they really have made a major contribution, not only in their awards, even in this session here. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you, moderator. Thank you all. I got one.
Is it time to wrap up? Yeah. Okay, I will have maybe a few final words while still the crowd is here. Well, really enjoyed that panel discussion. Thanks so much again, Cliff, for the great questions and for my fellow panelists. I would say still inspiring at this moment for the comments shared, but at this point we're getting close to the finish line for this entire week. The number one thing I want to say is I'm extremely grateful. Big thank you to everyone here for your participation, for your contribution, and you're my heroes staying up to this stage to really make this vibrant community and ecosystem. I'm more than hopeful at this point. And secondly, I think there are a lot of people working hard for putting this together. And my colleague Anand Padmanabhan and Diana Sinton on two sides of the room, that's perhaps by design. And of course, the organizing committee, including the leaders of the 5 institutes you've just heard. They are working very hard to mobilize this entire process. So thank you. Big shout out to all of you working hard to make this possible. So number 3 is let's find ways to stay connected, and especially in the coming year, is going to be critical for this community. My pitch to all of you is to coming off this meeting to put some thoughts together, and then we have a survey that's more about the process, but we'll also figure out a way to gather your feedback as to how this community would want to move together forward. And my final message is let's keep doing what we're doing and make bigger things happen. Thank you so much. Safe travels and the bright futures ahead of us. That concludes this gathering, and there are lunch boxes outside. If you have time, stay here. Continue to have fun with each other. If you're stepping out to travel, all the best. Until next time.
Thank you. And I heard will be in touch for the next year iteration. More to come on that.
Great. All right. Next year somewhere.
NSF, you can convince them for the next.
Thank you, Vatana. You did it, right?
Is this out? Is the outline here the one that I took?
Yes.
Okay, so you want me to take this out?
Yes.
And this down?
That one is taken.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I take the bottles here in the.
If you want,
The banners.
if you have space, you can take this away.
Okay.
If you can just pop it in this way. Can you just let me know when you're done? We can get one. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And you have the space for the banners?
yeah.